Most of us have faced a stressful or frightening situation and experienced an automatic physical reaction. A racing heart, tense muscles, suddenly sweaty palms. These reactions are attributed to an evolutionary adaptation referred to as the fight or flight response. It can be said that business has its own version of this response, developed and honed over years of experiencing threatening digital situations. Now, I've been having discussions with members of F5's Office of the CTO, who wrote a book called Enterprise Architecture for Digital Business. Chapter 5 is called Digital Fight or Flight. I had a chat with the author, Ken Aurora, Distinguished Engineer of Security Products and Strategy. He shares about how as digital business becomes the norm and the amount of telemetry generated by systems, network, and applications continues to increase, real-time analytics has produced a maturing market of threat detection and neutralization services. These technologies are capable of automatically responding to threatening situations and provide businesses the world over with the ability to defend itself against mounting pressure from attackers, both human and digital. However, over-invocation of the digital fight or flight response can dull its effect, or worse, cause detriment to overall business health. I hope you enjoy this chat with Ken, and after that, follow the link to go download this book. Hey everybody, today I am joined by Ken Aurora. Ken is a distinguished engineer with our F5 Office of the CTO, and he focuses on security. And he is one of the authors of the book in Enterprise Architecture for Digital Business. And so what we wanted to talk about today, specifically around security, was Ken, with organizations already having practices around information and data security, what needs to change to be able to enable digital businesses to be secure?
I think it's not as much of a change as it's an evolution. So the way to look at this is not a destination like, okay, I'm going to a particular place and once I get there, I'm done. What needs to change? It's an evolution, it's a journey. So what do digital businesses need to do going forward? It is there are adaptations to what's happening. There are a couple of themes here. I'd say the overarching theme is to take a more risk reward based approach to looking at their security. Security is never going to be perfect. There's always a trade off of whether it involves customer friction or cost against the business value you're getting. Um, I think that's one evolutionary step that we are as security practitioners working towards. Factoring that into your policy is an important part of the journey. Um, a second part of what we need to do think about is up leveling or going up to a higher altitude as we think about security. If you harken back 20 years ago, security was at the network layer. People built network firewalls and so on. Over time, that evolved. That a common word in the early 2000s was that HTTP was a new TCP. So we did HTTP. What's happening now is with the prevalence of APIs. APIs are essentially the next level of altitude for the currency by which we interact with systems. So API security and understanding how now not just securing your network, not just securing HTTP with the WAF, but also securing your APIs is an important part of that journey. So those are just two examples.
And when, some of the things that you've mentioned in the book have been around adopting risk-based approach and management of the security as well. And I'm wondering how all of this kind of ties into a zero trust approach, or is it the same, or where does that connect?
That's a very good question. So zero trust, I think, does really matter, and I think I even allude to it in several parts of that chapter. Um, the way to think about zero trust is at its core a set of principles, a mindset. We sometimes the mindset gets conflated with specific implementation or specific practices. So I'll start with the mindset. The mindset of zero trust starts with essentially a bit of healthy paranoia. You're going to assume breach. You're going to trust but verify. You are going to continuously assess, and I think something that's saying emergent in the last few years and is going to be really important in the next decade is the use of automated assistance, AI, machine learning. Those general principles guide you to where you need to be. Let's take one of those principles: trust but verify. As zero trust has been practiced, say in the last 5 or 10 years, say using Google's BeyondCorp, it was centered around user identity. When Boo logs into a website, I might, Boo might know a password, he might know a shared secret, and I might trust him. But trust is that's not sufficient. You might say, what else? Why should I really believe this is Boo if he's trying to move $1,000 into some third world country? So they'll ask for MFA. It's MFA is a technique. The underlying principle is one of trust, verify, and another related thing is least privilege. What is how little privilege do I need to give to Ken or to Boo in order to do the business function I need to do? Now let's take that same mindset, but apply it not just to users coming into a system. Let's apply it to what happens inside your application, which I think is going to become a very important trend in the next 5 to 10 years. As applications are getting more and more complicated, there's more and more software components, a lot of open source. As we've seen recently with SolarWinds, that makes all the open source makes the supply chain vulnerable to a sort of attack. So why do I trust this piece of software? Maybe it's been compromised. Maybe my adversary has actually put a deliberate vulnerability in that can be exploited. And now, because of the fact that they're incorporating the application, they're inside the application. So they didn't have to get through my perimeter. They're right there. So going back to zero trust. Well, okay, now let's apply those same principles. First, how least privilege, how little privilege do I need to give to that component? If that component is, say, a logging component, it might need to write to the file system, but it probably doesn't need to reach out to the internet. So don't give it that permission. Another is always observe. I think I did that, but is it doing something suspicious? Watch. That's another part of zero trust. And then finally, I'll go to the AI. There's so much data you're going to collect by doing this. It's beyond the ability of humans. The cost of these specialized humans is very high. So the use of AI and machine learning techniques to sort through that data and to alert the human only to the most important things is going to be an important part. And that's another page from zero trust.
That's a neat concept. So as we add, and I'm assuming we're adding these layers on top. So that means we still have traditional security, or as people would know it as like a network firewall. That's still in play at this point, or are we just relying on these extra layers now?
No, that's definitely in play. You still need a network firewall. There's still going to be, for example, network-based DDoS from botnets, and you need to be able to stop that. HTTP and TCP are still threat surfaces, and if they're compromised, the layers above it are going to be implicitly compromised. They might not even be aware of it. It's the equivalent of let's say I'm worried about somebody hacking my car or sabotaging my car. I'm going to worry about all my car's controls, but I doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the gas you put in or the roads you're on, because those are foundational and they're fundamental, and you don't get rid of them. They're just now have to be there, and you have to do this on top of it.
And then one last question for you, Ken, actually, is when we're looking at this risk-based and risk management approach here, are we moving to that because they're completely moving to that as opposed to just detecting and responding and neutralizing? Because some might say if we're moving to just basing everything on risk, then are we going to have less accuracy because things might slip through the cracks if your risk model isn't appropriate?
So it's always risk versus reward. What is I like to describe, let me give an example here. You log into your banking site and there's a number of different transactions that you could be doing. You could be checking your account, you could be transferring money, you could be opening a new account. Each of those different sorts of transactions has a different risk and reward profile associated with it. And I often describe this in a quantifiable metric as, what's my confidence? What's my confidence this is Boo that's doing it? What's the confidence identity? And that is going to be driven by many different factors. Yes, the fact you know a password. Maybe you did some MFA and you have a one-time password or a token. There are other things. Is this a device that you've been on? Are you coming from a location I've seen you come in from before? Are you behaving like Boo? Boo doesn't usually log in at 2 a.m. all of these things get rolled up into what I'll call a confidence score. What is my confidence in the fact that this is boo? And and then my policy will say I need to have just simplify this, say a 95% confidence this is boo if boo is trying to transfer money, but I can get away with 70% confidence if it's just an account lookup. Um, does that eliminate but no, it does not limit all possibilities of false positives or false negatives. What we're doing is we're making the thresholds appropriate, just like credit cards. Credit cards don't eliminate all fraud. They look at the transaction and they say, what is my risk profile and reward profile in this, and I will allow or disallow a specific transaction based on that transaction's profile.
Right. So that all kind of goes back to one of your earlier points, kind of the push and pull between risk and reward, or the user experience, I guess.
It is. If I can get on my F5 soapbox for a moment, they aren't always contradictory, and I point to there's a product called Recognize that it was originally part of the Shape portfolio. It's now F5 distributed cloud Recognize, and what it does is it centers around user timeouts. So when the usual way this works is I go to a website, maybe I go to Southwest Airlines, and I might need to authenticate, say this is who I am, and then I have 20 minutes, and for the next 20 minutes, I'm completely trusted. So there's two parts to this. One is the risk part of it. I shouldn't be completely trusted. I shouldn't be binary. Yep, you're completely trusted for the next 20 minutes, because you may be doing things that are very odd, and so your confidence is dynamic and change with time. But here's the push-pull thing. It could actually be a win-win thing, because after 20 minutes, if I could have increased confidence in your boo, because I've been watching what you've been doing. You've been doing exactly what you're doing. I might automatically extend that time you have by saying, yeah, I'm more confident that this is boo than I was when the person first logged in. So automatically extend the timeout. So here's a case where I'm reducing friction, improving the customer experience as a side effect of increasing my confidence. So I think there are cases a lot of times where if we just think about the problem a little bit, we can find things that are win-win, where the two things, security and user experience, are both positively impacted by some of the things we do, instead of one being a trade-off against the other.
Yeah, I love that concept, and that can only get smarter the more you use it. It sounds like you're compounding the ability to manage this risk, or the positives of it, by employing it more. So that's great.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Well, thanks a lot, Ken. This should be a great book. We're going to have links wherever you're watching this from or listening to this from right now. We should have links inside of the description, or whatever caption was accompanying this. This should be a great book for everyone to read. Thank you very much, Ken, for joining me today. And we look forward to hearing everyone's feedback on this book. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Boo.